what are we doing?
The story is called Anansi and Turtle's Feast.
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a spider named Anansi, and there was also a turtle named Turtle. One day, Anansi was cooking yams, and then Turtle was waddling down the street. But in their town, whoever knocked on the door at supper time had to share a meal with them. So Turtle smelled the yams, and then he thought like, oh, maybe I'll stop over at Anansi's. So then he waddled to Anansi's door, and then he rang on the doorbell. Ding dong! Anansi, the famous trickster, hates to share his meals. So he went to the door, opened it, he looked up, he looked straight, and then he pretended that he did not see Turtle, who was naturally on the ground. So then he was like, no one's here. So then while he was shutting the door, Turtle said, Anansi, I'm down here. Then Anansi let Turtle in. But then Anansi and Turtle sat down, but Turtle didn't wash his hands, so Anansi had an idea. Anansi said, Turtle, it's a little rude to come to the table without washing. Just look at your hands, they're filthy, Anansi said. So Turtle went out the door and waddled down to the creek. And then he waddled on the dusty, dirty road to his house. Then he sat down while he was just about to reach for a yam. Then suddenly, Anansi said, Turtle, look at your hands. Then Turtle looked at his hands and they were still filthy. So he went down to the creek and then he washed his hands and then he crawled on the grass, avoiding that dusty, dirty road. But once he was there, all the yams were gone.
That was rude.
Anansi had eaten them all up. Turtle, like you're supposed to, said, well, thank you for the feast. I better get back home. So he waddled back home and made himself some dinner. The next morning, Anansi woke up hungry. I'll stop at Turtle's house for supper tonight, he thought. So then, once it was supper time, he walked down to Turtle's home. He saw him sitting quietly on the bank. Then he said, oh, are you here to join me with a meal? So then Turtle said, follow me. So then Turtle hopped down into the water. Anansi hopped in too, but he just popped back up to the surface. He kicked, he pushed, he pulled, but he could not reach Turtle's table at the bottom of the creek. So he filled his fancy dinner jacket with rocks in his pocket. So then he went down and he did do it. So then he walked to the table about when he was going to reach a lobster with one hand, a crab with another, a yam with another, and a squid with another. Turtle said, at my home, we always remove our jackets before sitting down at the table. And Anansi thought, oh, manners. So then he slowly slipped off his jacket and pop, he went to the top of the creek. Then he was all like, oh man, in his head. So then he just laid down on his back and floated and imagined all the tricks he would play in return.
Thank you very much for that story. It was very well told.
Mama,
yes.
Stop recording.